Now, I don't know exact timeframes, but what I can show to you is the concentration of risk that we have today. And this is going to be true for many people who unknowingly are invested into this concentration of risk. They're unknowing because they have their 401k plans, their IRAs are in many instances simply allocated towards some of the large institutional players, whether it be your Fidelities or your State Streets or your BlackRocks or your Vanguards, or there's a whole room in them. They're all roughly the same insofar as they are aggregated capital, what we call passive capital. For anyone who wants to go and look into some of the machinations of why this is so risky, I'd look research and look up a gentleman, friend of mine, Mike Green, who's done a lot of work on this, and he talks about this passive flow and how dangerous that is and how it's a systemic risk. Anyway, the point is, if you think about it logically, what happens is you'll be earning your salary every month, and a certain portion of that maybe goes towards your pension. And so it goes into these funds, okay? It just gets allocated away. It's 10% or 5% or whatever it is, okay? That capital is typically going into these large institutional, quote unquote, passive blocks. Where that gets allocated, we can actually see that in the markets where it is currently being allocated. It is predominantly being allocated towards US equities, number one. Secondly, within the US equity markets, the structural breakdown of where it gets allocated typically on what's called a market capitalization weighted basis. In other words, if you've got a company that's a $2 billion company and another one that's a $1 billion company, it's going to allocate twice as much to the $2 billion company as to the 1 billion because of the weighting of that particular company. What this has meant is that more and more capital is being allocated towards companies that are larger, i.e. NVIDIA being the most extreme example of all of this, but the Mag 7 in general now accounting for what is the largest percentage aggregated capital within the S&P 500 as we've ever had before. Now, I'll give you a quick this is all might sound to people like, oh well, there's no, give me some reason why this could end. Why does it need to end now? So again, we don't know when it ends or why it ends or what the particular straw that breaks the camel's back happens to be. But what I can give you is some historical numbers. So if we go back to 1989 and the Japanese stock market, which at the time was the poster child of the world, right? And we had all these narratives that Japan was going to take over the world. Japanese businesses were studied in MBAs in Harvard, and Japan was the apple of the world's economic and financial eye. What we had in 1989 in terms of numbers is that the stock market weighting in terms of what's called the MSCI World Index, which is your global equities. As a percentage of global equities, Japan's stock market was weighted at 40 to 45%, okay? At the same time, Japan's GDP was 15% of the world economy. So the size of their economy, actual productivity was 15%, yet the valuation of their equities was 40 to 45%. So you can see the disconnect, right?